is to, this is our leadership and administrative session of panel experts. And the purpose is that you can learn a little bit about different roles in education. Like there's the teacher role, but then there's principal, superintendent, different roles like that. And so who we have here is Mr. Mark Guffey, and he is a principal at Pisgah High School. And this is Dr. Jennifer Gray, and she is the superintendent at Lauderdale, right? Lauderdale. And Miss Stacie Pace, and she is the, did I get your title right?
It is curriculum coordinator.
Curriculum coordinator for Arab City Schools. And then this is Suzette Johnson, and she is assistant principal at Hayden Middle School. So anybody from any of those systems? Have you heard of those systems? Blount County and DeKalb County, Lauderdale County,
Arab City.
Arab City. So what they're going to do is tell you a little bit about what they do, and then you can ask them any kind of question. So if you want to go ahead and start.
You want me to go first?
Tag.
Like I said, my name is Mark Guffey. I'm principal at Pisgah High School. I was the state principal of the year in 2010, 2011, and it was based on basically creating the hybrid schedule resource period. So it was just a period for small school systems like ourselves to offer things like cooking, cake decorating, fishing, music, art, things that we were not able to offer. That just gives you a little bit of background on me. The most important thing I'm here today to tell you is some of my duties as an administrator. And the most important job I have as an administrator is to hire prospective teachers, because you are the backbone of the education. What you do in each classroom determines the success of those students. You know, I look for someone that is energetic. You know, you can spot a great teacher most of the time, because a great teacher can teach anything. You know, I had an elementary background. I'm at a K-12 school, so I mainly deal with high school. But I would give you some advice to really focus on learning how to teach, strategic teaching. I've seen teachers that have very strong content knowledge of subjects, and they are a great teacher, can teach any subject because they know how to teach. So my opinion, this is my opinion, but I see it much more important for you to know how to teach, the strategic teaching, closed reading strategies, know all of that. I'm going to go, I made myself a few little notes here, so I'm going to kind of hit on them and make sure that I do not go over. But another thing that I like to see with my teachers is teachers that treat students with respect. You know, I think you can be a firm disciplinarian, but if you treat a student with respect, they're going to respect you back. You as students, you can think of who has had an impact on your life, what teachers you like as a student, and you're not going to most likely say that teacher that lets you goof off in class, that tries to be your buddy. You're going to say that teacher that taught you something, that treated you with respect, and in return, you respect them. And it's like I tell our teachers, you know, you can be a very firm disciplinarian. You can have control of your classroom, but you do it in a respectful way, and they will in return respect you. Be consistent, day in and day out. Don't come in one day just because you have a bad day and take it out on the students or not perform in the classroom, because everybody has a bad day. You know, you as students know you have bad days. If we expected less out of you on days you had a bad day, you know, somebody in that class every day is not getting something. So as a teacher, you can't expect anything less any day because of a bad day or something going on. One of the other things that I like to look for is be creative. Don't be afraid to think outside of the box. Don't follow the same pattern day in and day out. I like to use sports as an example. You have to coach to your ability. You have to teach to your ability. Every student is not the same. If you teach the same, then you're only going to reach a certain percentage of your students. Now, I tell our teachers, you know, a monkey could go in and teach a classroom. You're going to have a certain percentage of them that's going to get it. Because you have a certain percentage that's motivated. They're going to get it with or without a teacher. But it's that large percentage of students that fall in the middle that you impact. They're going to follow you as the teacher. If you are a great teacher, they're going to be great students. If you are a lackluster teacher, that's the type of student you're going to have. So, you know, keep that in mind. You impact the majority of that class. And you impact it more than one way. You impact it in how you teach and the things that you say. You know, words can be hurtful. You may have a bad day, and if you go in, you know, you criticize, they're not going to respect you. You know, don't take it out on the students. Be an example. And I'm going to leave you with a little, I guess you would say, joking advice. And it's a coaching analogy. There was this coach, and I think maybe y'all can relate to it because we're in the state of Alabama, so everybody loves football. So there was a coach and had a star quarterback, and they were in the playoffs, and the quarterback went down. You know, they were expected to win the state championship. So he goes to the backup quarterback. Now, the backup quarterback, young Bob, he's not too smart. So he tells him, he said, the only thing I want you to do is run 3 plays, and on that 4th play, you kick the ball just as far as you can kick it. Just get us out of here until our star gets back. First play, he throws a pass, gets about 20 yards. Second play, about 10 more yards. Third play, drives it all the way down to the 10-yard line, fixing the score. Fourth play, he rears back and kicks the ball as far as he can go. And they lose the game. The coach comes up to him after the game and says, Jimbo, what were you thinking? He said, Coach, you really want to know? I would love to know. Well, I was thinking, I've got the dumbest coach in the entire state. So what I'm saying is don't always take everything literal. You know, be creative. Think outside the box. Be your own person. Don't try to follow someone else. Be you and do what's successful for you. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Gray, and I'm the superintendent of Lauderdale County. So I just want to take a few minutes and tell you a little bit about what a superintendent does or what is expected of them, and some things you might want to think about if you are ever in the point of your life where you think, you know, I might want to be the superintendent of my school system, of a school system. I started out as a teacher for 15 years, and then I went to an assistant principalship for 3 years, and then I moved to the central office and was elementary curriculum federal programs director, and then I decided to run for superintendent, and I've been in that position since January of 13. And in my county, the superintendent is elected, and some are appointed in some areas, and some are elected, and I'm one of 37 in the state, which is still an elected position. How many of you have superintendents who are appointed that your board of education appoints, or is everybody here with an elected superintendent? Okay, we've got one here that's appointed. I'm elected to a 4-year term. If you're appointed, then you usually have a 3-year term with a contract. If you ever think about you want to be a superintendent, there's really not one way to know that you are ready. I don't think you're ever ready until you actually get in there and experience some things, but you need to think about your interests and the skill set that you have. And there's some questions that you need to ask yourself, and I'm just throw those out at you if you are ever in the position of where you think you might want to do this. Am I committed to improving education for all students? Because that's your number one goal, is to increase student achievement and improve their learning. Do I want to be an instructional leader? Do I have a knowledge of school finance, construction, law, and curriculum? I'm going to tell you right now, I have learned more about sewer systems than I ever thought I would ever need in my life, okay? Because, you know, you think of something that can turn into a big mess if you don't handle that right off the bat. Literally, a big mess. Can I live with criticism? That was the hard one for me to swallow because, you know, when I was younger, I wanted everybody to like me, and I thought everybody should like me. Well, that lasted about 30 minutes into the office, and then you're going to make a decision that will not be popular, and you'll be criticized, and you'll see your name in the paper, and what was she thinking, and there was a letter to one of our editors, you know, this superintendent and board, remember this when you're voting. So you'll get criticized. You will not make everybody happy, but if you make everybody happy, then you're probably not doing your job the way that it was meant to be done. So you need to think about that. Can I work on several issues at the same time? You've got to be a juggler. I mean, really, that's because you will have a lot of balls in the air, and one minute you're talking about sewers, and the next minute you're talking about instructional partners, and the next minute you're talking about law. So you've got to really be able to handle a lot of things that come across your desk at one time. Do you work well with people? This is a people business. I don't like to use the term, and I've heard it used, that school is a business. Well, there are aspects of the school that you may have to think about as a business, but your main goal here, you are dealing with people. So you need to always ask yourself, am I a people person? And you need to think about that, especially as you make the decision to become a teacher, or because you are dealing with people. If you don't like people, don't do that. Don't become a teacher. Am I respected and successful in my current position? So no matter what position you start in, you are setting that stage for the rest of your career. Okay, so when you go into, if you go into college and major in education, first time you walk into a school to observe, people are watching you. First time, when you go for your internship, people are watching you. So you've got to start building that foundation at the very onset. And another one, do I have the support of my family? That's a big one. You can't do it by yourself. There's a lot of late nights, early mornings, times you'll be gone. So you really need to think about, if you have family, children, how will this affect them? Because it will be a major difference in your family life. Some of the roles that a superintendent has, the first one, provide instructional leadership. And I think my background in curriculum did help me. You need to keep up with changes. You heard Dr. Bice, and he is one for changing, so he's a great speaker. Did you hear him talk about Plan 2020? All right, that has been a change just in the last few years. So as a superintendent, I need to know about Plan 2020, okay? I've got to be ready to turn that around to teachers. So keeping up with what's going on and providing that instructional leadership is important. And I think when a superintendent understands that, that adds weight to what he or she is telling the teachers, because you need to understand what you are asking them to do. Recommend policy and hires. Those are huge responsibilities. Nothing can be done by a board without a recommendation from the superintendent. So you have to take those responsibilities, that's a huge responsibility, like already been brought up. Recommending good people. You need to take this seriously. Anytime there are policy decisions, we have a committee. It goes back to working well with people. We have committees in our central office, and we bring in teachers, and we bring in principals, parents, and students to sit down and talk about the policies that we want to revise or trash altogether, and then those will be recommended to the board. So once you set those policies, a superintendent also has to implement the board policy to some degree, and you have to do that consistently. Because I know it probably burns you up when one student can get away with something, but the next student gets hammered for it. Have you ever seen that happen? Okay, you've got to be able to implement board policy consistently. Superintendent is in charge of managing the district finances. All school systems have a different amount in their budget, but you've got to know where that money comes from and how that money is being spent. So if you're ever a superintendent, one of the first things you need to do is you need to develop a good relationship with your chief school financial officer. Okay, he's the one in there, or she's working with that money, so you need to have a good open door relationship with him or her. and have some communication, because he or she can be your best friend or your worst enemy, I guess. Set goals. I think it's very important for a superintendent to set goals for the district. When we went through district accreditation, we were given that opportunity to do that. So I try to connect everything that we're doing as a system back to one of those main goals that we have set for ourselves. Communicate. This is extremely important as a superintendent, to be able to have good communication and on a lot of different levels. From the central office to the schools, because you don't want to break down there. You need to make sure that the schools are communicating with their home and their parents and their students. And at the same time, it's good for the central office to have good communication with the parents, the media, the community. So there's, we use call systems, we use Facebook, we use Twitter, we use blogs, we send home letters, newspaper. You just got to be ready for a lot of different means to communicate with your people. You have to implement state and federal laws, but these are usually non-negotiable. And yes, they're easy to look up, but you have to know where to go to look them up. Also, you need to be knowledgeable of legislation. Right now, our legislature is in session, so we have to keep up with what's going on there, because the things that they are deciding will in turn impact what's going on in your classroom. And you also have to set the tone for the district. The superintendent is really the face of what's going on. So things like, do you have an open door policy, or are you closed off and intimidating? Your stakeholders need to know what to expect from you. Superintendents need to be somewhat of a risk taker. There will be times you're going to make mistakes, but you've got to be willing to step out there and do that. You need to be forward thinking, and you need to be an advocate for public education. And also, I think a huge one is you need to be visible. I think it's very important for the superintendent to be in the schools and the students to know him or her and can call you by name, because I just think that helps form a relationship between what you're doing and what's going on in the classrooms. So just quick words of advice. Think about what you want to do now and start making plans, because it's never too early to go ahead and start laying that foundation. When you get ready to go to college, apply many different places. When you get ready to look for your first job, don't be locked into, well, I went to school there and that's where I want to teach. Sometimes the best thing you can do is get out and see what's on the other side of that door besides just your home area. Find a mentor and watch what he or she does, listen to what they do, learn from them, and ask questions, because there is no question too frivolous or too dumb or too silly, because we all have to start somewhere, and the best thing you can do is just ask a question. So, thank you very much.
All right, so we're going to pause right here, asking questions.
Yes.
So we've heard from a principal of a high school, it's called a high school, but it's K-12. So that's, kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And then we've heard from a superintendent. So think about, do you have any questions? So look at your neighbor right now and ask a question about what you just heard. Did y'all come up with a question? Do you have a question for Dr. Gray or Mr. Guffey? Y'all are shy. See, teachers
We
have to
don't
be
bite it
a
all.
little bit more
We're
outgoing.
suffering.
Okay, we've got one. Yay!
Hey, Dr. Gray, I'm starting in high school, and so our superintendent is Matt Massey.
Yes.
So, and right now we're kind of going through a thing of, do we build a new high school or not?
Monrovia.
Yeah.
Yes, I read about that.
Yeah, so, I don't understand the difference, I know the superintendent makes decisions like that, but now, this board is no, you can't do that, we've already decided we're gonna build this school, what's that kind of relationship?
I
And how does
know,
that work?
I know Madison was in a different situation because you had an outgoing superintendent, and I think some things were said, and then Mr. Massey was elected, so now he's in. The superintendent cannot decide on his or her own that we're going to do this. The superintendent is responsible to recommend to your board, okay? And I know there's been a lot of community, I don't want to use the word dissension, but there's some differences of opinion on whether or not that school should be built, and are you tearing Sparkman up, right, if that school is built. So he can make a recommendation to the board based on what he feels is in the best interest.
Right.
Okay, then the board, how many board members do you have? Is it 5, 7, or 9? Okay.
I think 7.
7, okay. So then he would have to have 4 votes to do whatever he's wanting to do, okay? And I know you have to take so much into consideration, you know, building a new school, just blinking, that's going to be $50 million.
Right.
At least.
You know, at least. And that may just get you a building and not any athletic facility. I mean, that's just a bare minimum. So you have to think a lot about that, and then you've got to think about, you know, is the community going to support this? You've got to have a tax base to support it.
So, like, the board is is it like the superintendent's boss, or like, are they just like?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay.
Yeah.
Elected is a little different. And see, I'm an elected position too. So you won't say that the board is necessarily our boss because they cannot fire or hire the superintendent, okay? If you're an appointed superintendent, the board can say, thank you, go pack up your desk, and, you know, we'll buy your contract. They can do that. But there is an accountability. It's kind of checks and balances. You can recommend, but you've got to have your votes, even if you're elected or appointed.
So consensus kind of has to be achieved.
Yes.
Between the board and the superintendent in this situation.
And it's always good if something is, well, I like anything. I've got 5 members on the board. I don't like 3-2 votes. Because to me, and luckily, I've not had any 3-2 votes, to me that sends a bad message that we're not even speaking as one voice from the superintendent and the board. Okay? Because a 3-2 out of a 5, that's still saying, okay, we're not all on the same page.
Right.
Any questions for Mr. Gray?
Since you're at a K-12 school, I was wondering how many disciplinary analysis is that, or since it's such a wide range program?
You've got to, basically I treat it as 3 separate schools. We have all the buildings on the same campus, but we have elementary in one area, junior high in one area, and high school in one area. So the dress code for high school, of course, is a little different than for elementary. I try to be involved in all of it. My assistant principal does a lot of the elementary, and I handle most of the high school. But at the same time, one minute I may have a kindergarten student in my office that's, you know, acting up, and 5 minutes later I may have a senior that was caught smoking pot. So you've got to be ready for a wide variety of things thrown at you.
Good questions, ladies. Okay, let's move on to Ms. Pace.
Good morning. I'm Stacie Pace. I am the kindergarten through 12th grade curriculum coordinator at Arab City Schools. And we are a small district. We have 4 schools. And this is finishing up my 15th year in education. I began as a first grade teacher, and then I also taught 5th grade, and then this is my 6th year at the central office working as the curriculum coordinator. Because we are a small school system, I have several different hats, several different jobs that I am responsible for, but the most important job with curriculum coordinator is I have the opportunity to work with all of our building administrators and all of our district administrators and our instructional coaches at the schools to make sure that the curriculum that we're providing in our classrooms aligns with the state standards. I'm sure Dr. Weiss probably talked to you a little bit about Plan 2020, the standards and the expectations. So the past 3 years have been really huge. It's been a lot of work for our teachers and administrators to learn the new standards the state adopted, the Alabama College of Career Ready standards. That encompasses the Common Core that I'm sure you've heard about. And so we've done a lot of work to make sure that the things that we're doing in our classroom are preparing our students when they graduate to be able to go to college or the workforce or their careers. So that's my biggest responsibility. Also coordinating professional development for our teachers, making sure they have the tools that they need to implement those things in the classroom. I want to focus a little bit on, they asked us to talk to you guys about advice. And so if you'll just take a minute and think about a teacher that had a positive impact on you in your life. And you may have one, you may have several, but we all have those teachers that really stand out, the classrooms that we look forward to going to. And think about what made that teacher stand out, what qualities did she have. And one thing that, from my experience, I've noticed there are certain things that those high-performing teachers have in common across the board. I saw it when I was a student, and I see it when I was in my colleagues, when I was in the classroom, and then I also see it now as an administrator when I visit classrooms. And I came up with 5 things that they have in common, and there are more than this, but these are the 5 that I came up with. The first thing is, and Dr. Gray mentioned this, having a heart for children. You have to love kids, whether that is the 5-year-old in kindergarten, or maybe you want to work with those older kids. Some of you were thinking about that's getting ready to go off to college or getting ready to graduate high school. You have to have that love for kids. The second thing is have to be passionate and knowledgeable of your content. You have to love it. You have to have an excitement. When you think about that teacher that really stands out to you, she or he was able to get you excited, whether it was about reading a novel or learning how to speak Spanish or whatever it was. Those kind of teachers are exciting, and that flows over into their students. The third thing is being reflective. Effective teachers, they're always looking to refine their work. They do it all day long with their students in the classrooms. They're questioning, what's working well, what's not. They evaluate their lesson plans, and they see, they look at your student work. They look to see, do the students get that level of understanding that I need them to get? And so then they make adjustments. If not, sometimes they may even need to reteach. So like somebody mentioned when we first came in here, you have to be flexible as a teacher. And that's no matter if it's at the beginning of your career or at the end of your career. The fourth thing is being a lifelong learner. Whether it's your 5th year in the classroom or your 25th year in the classroom, those effective teachers, they're seekers. They're constantly wanting to get better. I learn on my job every day. There's something new. There's always a better way. And so really being a seeker and not getting into, this is the way I've always done it. Students change. Things in the community change. Technology is a big thing. You have to be open to those kind of changes. And you have to know what the best practices are. You mentioned strategic teaching. You have to know, what strategies can I use that the research says works. And be on top of the current things going on in education. If it is technology, really be able to implement that in your classroom. And the last thing is being student-centered. Really focusing on what's best for students. Don't get bogged down. There's so many things that go on. You can get bogged down worrying about state assessments or worrying about, something going on in a school. But effective teachers stay student focused. Every decision they make is about what's best for the kids in my classroom. So having said all that, teaching is not an easy profession. It is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of commitment. It is not an August to May kind of job. It's not 8 in the morning to 3:30. Because the teachers that, that made impacts on your life, those teachers are there before school starts, after school starts. They're working all summer long. They're planning lessons in the summer, getting ready for their school year. But thing that is great about teaching is it is so rewarding. It is a lot of work, but you see it in the rewards when you're working with a 1st grade student and they're starting to learn how to read. Or you're working with an 8th grader and they've struggled with this math skill and now they've persevered and they've been able to complete it. Or maybe even a student comes back after graduating and tells you about the success they had, the impact you had. So it is a very rewarding profession, but it is it's a lot of hard work. So I guess in closing, like Dr. Gray said, just think about why do you want to be an educator? If you want to be that effective, high-quality teacher, you have those kind of Are you passionate? Do you love kids? Are you a lifelong learner? Can you be reflective? So, but those are the things that I've seen over the years as common qualities, traits teachers have across the board, whether it's in an elementary classroom or a high school classroom. So I wish you best of luck as you start making your plans for your future.
Hard work, but it's fun, Mark.
It is, yes.
Hi, I'm Suzette Johnson, and I am an assistant principal at Hayden Middle School in Wayne County, and this is my first year in that role, so I am brand new to it. Before that, I was a teacher in the classroom, and then I was an instructional coach for several years. I'm going to kind of reiterate on a lot of the things you've already heard, but I think that's good for you to hear because you're hearing it from 4 different people. And the first thing I want to tell you is I think the most important thing for anyone going into education is they do have to have a heart for kids. We can train you to be in strategic teaching, we can train you in all of those things, but we can't teach you to love kids. That's something you come in the door with. You also have to have a heart for the community in which you're going to work, and you have to have a heart for those parents. You're going to get ugly phone calls from parents. You're going to get, especially in my job, as assistant principal, I deal with attendance, I deal with discipline, and so I get those phone calls. I have to make those phone calls a lot of times that are not the best and most wonderful phone calls to make. But you have to be able to have interpersonal skills where you deal with people and diffuse situations a lot. So you have to have a heart for those people. One of the things that I like to think about, and I do this every year, and I talk to our teachers about it at the beginning of every school year, is I imagine our kids walking through. We have these big front doors. We're an old building. We have big front doors at the front of our school. And I imagine our kids, in my mind's eye, coming through the front door, and every child has a piece of luggage that they bring in that front door with them. Some kids, it's a little crossbody purse. Some kids, they're dragging huge bags behind them. But every kid that you're going to teach, if you decide to be a teacher, brings their baggage with them to school every day. And some kids, they can fit their baggage in a small little purse. It's not much. But some kids, they're having to drag their baggage behind them every day. And you have to keep that in mind when you're dealing with kids. They bring with them to school what their past, what happened at home, what happened last night. And that's just something that, in having a heart for kids, that you have to remember to deal with that. And so, Dr. Weiss mentioned this morning that teachers have to be champions for their kids. There's a great video, it's a TED Talk video, and it's called Every Child Deserves a Champion. And I would like to encourage you to watch that video. If you're looking at it going into this, it's about 5, 7, 8 minutes long. I encourage you to watch that. 21st century skills, Dr. Weiss touched on those today. You may have heard those before: collaborate, be problem solver, critical thinking, all of those things. That's something you will use as an educator. Teaching is no longer go in your room, shut the door, and teach on your own. Teachers don't do that anymore. Administrators don't do that anymore. I collaborate with my principal on a lot of different things. If there's a difficult discipline situation, we'll work together to try to solve it. We have to think critically all the time. Several people have talked about juggling situations. I may be on the phone with a parent, the teacher comes to the door with another student. There are all types of things that happen throughout the day, and that you have to problem solve, you have to think critically. Dr. Weiss also mentioned the desire to want to continue to learn. That was mentioned by others here today. If you want to hold any job right here, a 4-year degree won't get it for you. So if you're interested in holding any of these positions, you have to have that desire to want to continue to learn. You'll have to go on and get a master's degree and continue your education. The final thing I want to say to you is good luck, first of all, in your future endeavors. Congratulations on graduating from high school. That is what we want from every child a graduate. Think very carefully about your choices. Have a heart for kids, because they deserve it. They deserve a champion. They deserve an advocate, because not all of them have that at home. And so you have to be their advocate. And so Thank you for coming today, and I wish you the best today as you visit different sessions. I didn't have a whole lot different to share than what they all shared, but in my role as assistant principal, 2 of you have been assistant principals before, so, you know, this is a stepping stone to these other areas, and so it's a fun job. I love kids, I love what I do. It's not always the easiest job, though, so good luck.
Thank you. Okay, so you saw a lot of different opportunities in education, in addition to the classic, teacher. So do you have any questions for our curriculum specialist or assistant principal? So what kind of degree did, like, to be a principal, you have to have a little bit more than a master's, right? What other degree do you need?
To be a principal, it's just a master's.
Master's in administration.
Oh, master's in administration. Okay, so if you got, but you got an EDS.
I have finishing my degree.
So if you didn't get your master's in administration. So, are any of you interested? Like, have you thought that far ahead? You get into it, just want to get into it. Who wants to teach elementary school? Raise your hand. Any high school? Okay, everyone, high school, okay. Who wants to teach K-3, the little bitty kids? Okay.
Oh, that was my background.
Yeah.
K3.
K-3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what about 4, 5, 6? Okay. K-3, raise your hand. The little kids, okay, and then the rest are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, junior high, middle school.
And my advice is get as much field experience, and I know you get that in school as you possibly can. If you may think, oh, I want to teach kindergarten, but then you may get in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade classroom and think, oh, I love this age child, and you would have never thought that you would have. So get as much experience with as many different age groups as you can.
So I ended up in middle school. I didn't think, I love middle school.
I would have never thought I would love middle school, but I
Yeah, I love middle
absolutely love middle school kids. Love them.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you. And